welcome to A Year of Career, 52 Practical Answers to Your Questions. I'm Erin Wolfer, and I own and operate Career Advantage and Career Advantage Golf, where I help professionals feel more confident and prepared throughout their job search by helping with resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, mock interviews, really just anything job search related. But each week in this podcast, I answer one question from the public. And this week's question is, how can I make my resume compliant to applicant tracking systems? And applicant tracking systems a lot of times are known as ATS. So I may talk about ATS during this podcast, and so I am referring to applicant tracking systems. And there are really two things that you want to consider when you are making sure that your resume can be read by an applicant tracking system and hopefully noticed, so you will not immediately be discounted. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the formatting of your resume. With format, if you want to make sure that the format in your resume can be read by an applicant tracking system, my biggest suggestion is to have just a basic format. Nothing too fancy, nothing too creative, just a basic format. So I would avoid using any column formatting or using tables of any kind to format your content. And the reason that I recommend that is, one, applicant tracking systems may not be able to read that type of formatting. And if they can read that kind of formatting, it's possible that they won't read your content in the correct way that you intend for it to be read. So what I mean by that is applicant tracking systems are typically going to read your content from left to right, and then it'll move to the next line and read from left to right, and the next line from left to right. If you have columns or tables, it's quite possible that you have content related to different headings within your resume. For example, maybe skills, experience, volunteer work, education, that is kind of overlapping from left to right. So what I mean by that is, in your left column, for example, maybe you have your contact information, you have a skills list, and you have your education. And then over on the right, you have your summary of qualifications and your experience. If an applicant tracking system is reading your content from left to right, it's going to get confused and your content is going to get jumbled because it's going to be reading your skills on the same line as your experience, for example. So that's why I recommend not using a column or table format in your resume, because your content may not be read correctly, or it may not be able to be read at all by an applicant tracking system. Now, one thing to remember is that not all organizations are going to use an applicant tracking system, so this may not be relevant to everyone, and that's perfectly fine. There are certainly more creative fields where you do want to have a more creative resume, where you can use columns, for example, to format, to have a slightly more modern look. You might use some color and just have a little more creative product. But if you are in a field where you know that there's a recruiter that's being used to vet talent, who is going through applications and looking for top quality folks to bring in for an interview, it is quite possible that an applicant tracking system is being used. If you're applying for a job within an organization that's very large, for example, a Fortune 500 company or just another large organization, it's likely that they use an applicant tracking system because they are getting so many applications. They need something to help them scan those applications and weed out those folks who definitely are not qualified. But if you are applying for a position in an organization where they maybe don't have, a recruiter who's actively searching for top talent, or it's a smaller organization where they only have a few staff members, or it's a local organization, or again, it's in a more creative field, you might not have to worry about these applicant tracking system tips. But I recommend, doing some research on your industry to find out if applicant tracking systems are a common practice. So if you find that they are, obviously consider those formatting tips that I just shared, but also you want to consider a few things with your content as well. And as with any application, no matter what industry you're in, you always want to tailor your resume to the specific job for which you're applying. So make sure that you read that position description thoroughly, that you have looked to see how your skills, strengths, qualifications, achievements, etc. align directly with that job description, and make sure that you're using the same keywords in the job description. Use those keywords from the job description and include those in your resume, assuming you have those skills or those qualifications. If you don't have those skills and qualifications, obviously do not include them in your resume. You don't ever want to be caught in a lie. And if you don't meet a lot of or if you're not able to include a lot of the keywords on your resume because they're just not relevant to you, your experience, or qualifications, then you might want to decide not to apply because it might not be a very good fit for you. So ultimately, when you look at a job description and you read through it, your hope is that your skills, strengths, and qualifications match the keywords, the content, the language that's in that job description extremely well, so you can customize your resume to demonstrate that you are a great fit for that position. One thing to remember with applicant tracking systems is you don't want to just include keywords one time on your resume. So if you see different keywords in that job description, like strong communication skills, ability to work as a member of a team, strong organization ability, leadership, those types of things, you want to make sure that you get those keywords on your resume multiple times, because sometimes, most of the time actually, the applicant tracking system is scanning to see if that resume has certain keywords a certain number of times. So for example, the applicant tracking system might scan the resume to see if it has the key phrase communication skills listed at least 4 times in the resume. And if it doesn't, it's possible that that resume could be, tossed aside and not considered further. Overall, typically it's going to look for a number of keywords a number of times and then give the resume an ultimate score that allows the applicant tracking system to decide whether or not that resume will be kept for further investigation, and that person will possibly be invited to an interview by an actual recruiter. So using keywords, skills, language that matches the job description more than once, so multiple times within your resume, is also very important. So aside from that, just in general, I already talked a little bit, I think, about using just a basic bullet format on your resume. And with those bullets, make sure that you also use strong action verbs and measurable results. So the more that you can demonstrate the results from your actions, the better. So you want to try to tie a number, if at all possible, to any of your statements that demonstrate your achievements when you are explaining the accomplishments associated with each of your experiences. And that is important no matter whether or not your resume is being scanned by an applicant tracking system or not. You want to prove your value through strong action verb statements with measurable results. You also want to remember to use fragments on your resume. So we're always taught to use complete sentences, but on your resume, actually, you're going to use fragmented statements, so it's easier to skim. So keep that in mind as well as far as the format of your actual content. So in general, Keep your resume very basic. If you think that an applicant tracking system is going to be used to scan your resume initially, I know that can seem very boring, but it would be much better to have, a boring resume that truly shows your qualifications, has those keywords that are associated with the job description so you can make it to that next step and be invited to an interview, versus having a resume that looks really nice. The aesthetics are great, but you're never even going to be considered, even if you are the most qualified person, simply because the applicant tracking system may not be able to read your content correctly. So those are a few things to think about as you work on developing your resume. And like I said, make sure to do some research on your industry to find out if applicant tracking systems are often used. And if they are, then make sure that you are following these tips. You can also use some free resources online to compare your resume to a specific job, and it will give you a rating as to how well your resume meets the requirements of applicant tracking systems. So you might want to check some of those out as well. If you have any questions or need help making your resume either applicant tracking system compliant or just developing your resume in general, you can always contact me. My websites are careeradvantageresumes.com and careeradvantagegolf.com. You can also check me out on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm at Career Advantage Resumes, and on Twitter it's at Advantage Career. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your week.